Hello and welcome to TechByTosh. My name is Toshit, and in this video we are going to talk about anyone with the links option when you share any files or folders within SharePoint Online on OneDrive for Business. We will be looking at using alternate options to anyone with the links option. We'll find out how we can actually use any sort of authentication which is not available when you use anyone with the links options. So let's go and watch the video. I'm currently logged on to a SharePoint Online site called TBT Projects. Under TBT Projects, I have some documents which we want to share with external parties and guests. This is specifically about looking for anyone with the link options and what happens when we disable those options and how we can still share the documents with external recipients and with our guest users. That would be a proper way to track and so that we have verified and authenticated users accessing our documents. So with the current setup, let's have a look what we currently have set up within the SharePoint Admin Center. So I have the SharePoint Admin Center open, but if you don't, you can actually browse to the SharePoint Admin Center by going to your tenant name -admin.sharepoint.com. Under this SharePoint Admin Center, I'll click on the policies. So on your left hand side, you will see there is a section called policies, and under that there is a sharing policies section. I already have this page open. So these are the current settings I currently have for my SharePoint Online and OneDrive sites and files and folders. So what we currently have right now is a most permissive permission, which basically says anyone. So what it means is users can share files and folders using links that don't require sign-in. So what does it mean is that within SharePoint Online or OneDrive, when a user shares a file or a folder, the recipients get a link. Now that link they can actually share with anyone else as well. So as long as anyone has that link, they will be able to access those files and folders that you have shared. Now I have discussed more about these options and how we can limit some of these settings having anyone in place. You can check out the part 1 of my video where I have spoken much about the external settings and anyone with the link settings. Just in a brief, we in that video I covered about files and folders links and having the defaults and how you can actually change the default values for the view and edit for when sharing files and folders within SharePoint Online or OneDrive for Business, and how to set up the expiry dates for those links. So we won't talk about these options in this video. What we are going to look at is how we can change these settings and have more proper security in place so that when the files and folders are shared within SharePoint Online or OneDrive, then they are more secure. So first, let's have a look with these current settings how SharePoint Online works. So let's go back to the SharePoint Online site that I have. It's called TBT Projects, and try to share a document. So let's click on the share button, and we have all these options available to share with external parties or the guests. So we are going to talk about anyone with the link option. So I'm going to share this document using anyone with the link option. If I have disabled the allow editing option, so you can know more about this in my previous video where I've talked more about the external sharing settings with anyone with the links option in SharePoint Online and OneDrive for Business. So we'll just go and say apply, and let's share it with my Gmail account, so toshitb50@gmail.com. Now toshitb50 is an external recipient. This email address is outside of the organization, and also this email address is not added as a guest account. So this is purely external recipient. So let's just share the document. Let's just send. Now this is going to do is this is going to send an email to toshitbn50. Let's open that email. If I click on the inbox, make sure to check the spam as well. Sometimes it ends up in a scam. So here you go. We received the email, and that's the document's been shared. And once we receive the document, it says the link will work for anyone. What it means is, even if I forward this email to someone else, any random person or any random person has this link, they can also open this document. The access will be same because we did not allow editing on the document, so the person opening the document won't be able to make any modifications to the document. But if in your organization you have allowed editing enabled, and if the document is shared with the modified option or editing option, then any person who has this link can modify the document. So let's just click on this document. I'll open this document in incognito window, so we don't have any sessions problems. So this is the document. I simply clicked on the link and the document opened itself. I am not signed in here, so this is basically any anonymous person who has that link will be able to open this document. It did not ask me for any authentication. It's basically an open URL for anyone to access, which is, it could be concerning if you have a lot of confidential documents within your organization and your users are sharing those documents with any external parties without even realizing that this could basically open a bigger security hole within your environment. So let's just close out this window and we go back to our SharePoint Online site again. Now, we have looked at that option, how the anyone with the link option works. So let's just go back to SharePoint Admin Center. So we have already looked at the anyone option. Now, let's say we don't want to use this option because obviously there are some security problems with this option unless your organization really wants to use this option. So what are the alternatives if we don't want to use this option? So let's have a look at the new and existing guests. So if we change the settings to new and existing guests, what it means is guests must sign in or provide a verification code. So what does it say is, if you are sharing a document or a file with a guest who is already a guest within your tenancy, that person will get an email and then they will need to sign in using their username and password, the same email account which has been added as a guest. If you are sharing a document with an external recipient who is not a guest within your tenancy, then that person will be prompted to enter a verification code. So let's see how it works. So we have changed these values to new and existing guests, and let's click save. So we now go back to SharePoint set collection that we have, the TBT projects, and let's try to share the TBT user access policy. So we click on the share button, and obviously within this you might notice that the people in TechByTosh with the link can view. So this default value has changed. If we click on that, anyone with the link option is now grayed out. So within SharePoint Online or OneDrive, when your users try to share the document, this option will be grayed out for them. So what are the other options for them? So they can actually use all these three options, which basically says people in the organization with the link. That means any users who are within the organization can access it, and any users who already have access to the documents or folders within SharePoint Online or OneDrive for Business, they can access it. If you really want to share the document with some external recipients, then they will be using specific people option. So let's click on this one, and obviously you have all these settings there, which is say allow editing. This is not disabled because what we have done is we only disabled it for anyone with the link option. So your users will still have options whether they want to allow editing for those documents or not. So let's click apply, and then by default it is view only because we haven't ticked off the allow editing option. So let's try to share it with toshitb50@gmail.com again, who is not a guest user within the tenancy. So toshitb50, So let's just say this is a new document and we click send. So we close that one and let's just check the email. So go back and just refresh it. So we now have the email. Let's just open this email. Now this time it actually says the link only works for the direct recipients of this message. The other email which we received, it basically said this is anyone link. So this says this link will work for anyone. But the message has changed for the recent document that we shared, which basically says this link only works for the direct recipients of this message. Now let's try to open this document. So I right click and open in incognito window, and it now opens up the page which basically says request verification code. So if I click on the send code button, it's going to send an authentication code to my email address, to the email where the document was shared. So it doesn't open the document anonymously. So there is some sort of security or authentication which is required by the users, which is basically a proper way of tracking or making sure that the document is being opened up by the authorized recipients. So let's click on send code, and now it's asking me for the code. Let's just go back and check the email address. So we open up this. So that's the code there. So 703-96548. Just enter the code 703-96548 and click verify. So it's now verifying the code and it has now opened up a document for me. You will also notice that it actually now shows who is signed in for the document. So this is basically a proper authentication which has happened in the background, and it actually makes sure the document is being opened by an authenticated recipient. We looked at the anyone with the link option and new and existing guests. This is how you can actually prevent some accidental sharing of the links or the documents and files within your tenancy. And this way you can have proper authentication in place. Now let's try to share the document with a user who is already a guest user within our tenancy. So I'll go back to this SharePoint Online Site Collection again, and let's just try to share this document. So again, we want to share it with specific people, let's say, and click apply, and then I enter should@gmail.com. So this user is already added as a guest user within the tenancy. So let's just say click send, and let's have a look at the email. So this is the email I received for the document that I shared with the user who is already a guest user within the tenancy. So now let's click on the document and try to open this document. We'll open it in incognito window. So when we open the link, this time it doesn't ask me for an authentication code. It basically says you have received a secure link, sign in, and we will give you the access immediately. Now, why do I get this message is because previously when we shared the document with an external recipient who is not a guest user within the tenancy, then they need to provide the authentication code. But in this case, toshitb@gmail.com is already added as a guest user within the tenancy. So when we share a document with them using the specific people option, they will need to sign in to access the document. Now, if I click next, it's going to take me to the sign in page where I need to provide my username and password. This username should be the same username that the document was shared to. Otherwise, it will not work. And then I enter my password, and then the document will open. So I enter the password, and it actually asking me, let's say not signed in. And once I provide my username and password, it actually gives me and opens up a document for me. So the two things we have actually, kind of looked at. One is obviously when you share a document with external recipients, they will need to provide the authentication code. And if we share a document or a file from SharePoint Online or through OneDrive for Business to the users who are already added as guests within your tenancy, then those users will need to sign in using their Microsoft account, or if you're sharing with someone who already has a Office 365 license, for example, with a person from another organization who is already added as a guest, then they need to provide their username and password for the Office 365 account that they've been using, and to the same account with the document has been shared. It also tells me that Amy Adams is logged in. So Amy Adams is the name associated with that email address. So this is how you actually control the authentication. Now there are some more external settings where you can actually control the behavior of the sharing files and folders within SharePoint Online. It basically, more about managing and how you can control the sharing or the permissions within SharePoint Online or OneDrive for Business documents. Now let's have a look at the first one. Limit external sharing by domain. So what it means is if you click on this option, you can actually add domains. So this setting basically, it allows you to specify a list of allowed or blocked domains for sharing. So let's click on the add domains. Now you will see it says allow only specific domains or block specific domains. So when allowed domains are specified, then the sharing invitations can only be sent to those domains. So when a user tries to share a document with any other domain which is not allowed, they won't be allowed to share any documents with them. So you can actually limit the use of sharing options to specific domains or the third parties that your organization works with. If you enter any denied domains or, for example, blocked domains, let's say there is an organization where you don't want your users to share any documents to. So when you specify those domains, the sharing invitations cannot be sent to those domains. This setting affects all the SharePoint and OneDrive sites within the organization. So it's not specific to a particular site or OneDrive. So basically when you specify these options, you're actually specifying it for all the sites within your organization. I just cancel this out. The second option is about allowing specific users to share externally. Now, if we check this option and click on manage security groups, you can actually specify a security group where only these users will be allowed to share any documents externally. For example, maybe you don't want your users to share documents externally, but you do have some executives or a particular team, for example HR or legal, and they want to share and collaborate with the external parties. You can actually create a security group and add them here. So for example, I already have a group, so let's just project team members. Now right now this is only giving me one option, which is can share with authenticated guests only, but let's just close this one. Let's say we had anyone with access enabled. So if we have anyone access and we click on the security groups again, and let's try to add that group again, and this time we actually have two options. We can also limit a group of users. If you already have anyone settings in place and you don't want to change this setting, you can actually specify a group who can only share anyone links with externally. So cancel this one out. Let's just go back to this setting. The third setting is basically guests must sign in using the same account to which sharing invitations are sent. Now this setting is basically prevents guests from redeeming site sharing invitations using a different email address. Say for example, if I sent an email to xyz@gmail.com and a user sign in using abc@gmail.com, they won't be able to redeem those sharing invitations using abc@gmail.com. They have to use xyz@gmail.com to redeem the sharing invitation. So you should have this setting in place so that it makes sure the documents or the files you're sharing or invitations you are sharing are only redeemed by the person who's supposed to redeem those invitations. Now the next setting is allow guests to share items that they don't own. Now this setting is on by default. So when this setting is enabled, all the guests can actually share items that they don't own with other users or guests. So if I share a document with someone, and if the setting is enabled, then they will be able to share those documents again with other guests. So this is something you need to think about as well, whether you want your users or guests to share the document that you have shared with them. The next one is guest access to a site or OneDrive will expire automatically after this many days. So when you enable this, you can actually specify the number of days that the site or the OneDrive will expire automatically. So what this means is, if we set an expiry date for the guest access, each guest that you invite to the site or to whom you have shared the individual files or folders, they will be given access to those documents or files or folders for this many days, and after that their access will expire. The next in line is people who has used a verification code must re-authenticate after this many days. So when you can actually enable this setting and you can specify the number of days. There is also an information button which basically says this setting affects only ad hoc external recipients who are not guests in Azure Active Directory. So this is more of anyone links kind of an option. This basically says when you share a document, it actually requires users to authenticate with a one-time passcode, and then they need to re-authenticate after this many number of days. These are some of the settings within external sharing. We pretty much covered all of the settings on this page, or rather in external sharing. Depending on your requirements within your organization, you can choose to have these permissions to existing guests or only people in your organization. If your organization works with external parties or different vendors, then you can look at new and existing guest options or existing guests only. If you use existing guests only, then obviously all those guest users must be added within your Azure Active Directory, or the invitations must be sent prior to sharing all those files and folders. Or you can have this setting where no external sharing is allowed for any documents. If your organization is working just within your own domain space and you don't work with any vendors or external parties, you can consider using this option. All these other options we already talked about. So some of these options, as I said, I've already spoken about in my previous videos. These are the other settings on external sharing. It basically says show owners the names of people who viewed their files in OneDrive, and let site owners choose to display the name of people who viewed the files or pages in SharePoint, and using short links for sharing files and folders. Alright, so in this video we looked at how we can disable anyone with the link option to share any files and folders within SharePoint Online, and what are the alternate options to anyone with the links. We can secure our environment so that any users who are accessing any files and folders within our SharePoint Online or OneDrive for Business, they should use the authentication code. I hope you really enjoyed the video. Please don't forget to hit like and leave your comments below. Consider subscribing if you want to see more videos like this in future. That's it for today. I hope to see you next time.